She had nothing, not even a bed to sleep on, but she had knowledge. When a billionaire saw his little girl being taught math on a park bench by a homeless black teenager, he thought it was a mistake. What happened next changed not only his daughter's future, but the world's view of what true wealth really is. The city was alive that morning, with honking cars, hurried footsteps, and voices weaving into the restless hum of daily life, but in the small corner of Central Park where the trees offered shade and the world felt just a little slower, an extraordinary scene was unfolding that no one had expected. Samantha Reed, the 9-year-old daughter of Daniel Reed, the billionaire known for his chain of tech empires and ruthless boardroom presence, sat on a weathered wooden bench, her tiny face concentrated, her hand clumsily gripping a pencil as she scribbled equations on the back of an old cardboard box. Beside her, in clothes that had seen better days, sat a young black girl, perhaps 16, her curly hair tied back with a worn ribbon, her eyes bright with intelligence that sparkled far brighter than the coins passers-by sometimes tossed into her paper cup. Her name was Aaliyah, and to anyone else she looked like just another homeless girl trying to survive the streets of New York, but Samantha's laughter and eager nods told a deeper story, that she was learning something no private tutor had been able to teach her with such patience and clarity. And then it happened. A sleek black car pulled up at the park's edge, doors opening with a practiced hush, and out stepped Daniel Reed himself, crisp suit pressed, polished shoes shining, his phone glued to his ear as his assistants trailed behind him. He had only meant to stop for a brief meeting nearby before heading to the airport, but what he saw on that bench froze him mid-step. His daughter, his only child, was sitting with a homeless girl, looking at her as though she was the wisest person in the world. His first instinct was anger, fear, even shame. What would people think if the media caught the billionaire's daughter studying with someone from the streets? But before he could speak, he noticed the way Samantha's eyes glowed, the way she kept saying, "I get it now, I really get it." While the girl, Aaliyah, nodded with pride, correcting her gently and encouraging her with a teacher's grace. Something twisted in his chest, something he had long buried beneath numbers, deals, and dollar signs. He stayed still, unseen, listening as his daughter solved a problem for the first time without frustration, and when she hugged Aaliyah tightly, saying, "You're the best teacher ever," Daniel realized this wasn't an accident. This was fate forcing him to look at what he had ignored all his life, the brilliance hidden behind broken clothes, the wealth disguised in the poor, the lesson that money could never buy. Daniel approached slowly, his footsteps heavy, not because he feared confrontation but because he feared what this moment would reveal about him, the father who had provided his daughter with every luxury but somehow not the right kind of guidance. Aaliyah stiffened when she noticed him. Years on the streets had taught her to read faces quickly, to know when she was welcome and when danger lurked, and the sharp jawline and cold eyes of the billionaire screamed trouble. She immediately stood, clutching her tattered backpack close, mumbling an apology as though teaching his daughter had been a crime, but Samantha jumped up and hugged her arm tightly, shouting, "Daddy, this is my friend. She's helping me with math because you said I needed to get better before school starts again, and she's amazing at it." Daniel's eyes softened just enough to let Aaliyah breathe, but his questions began in rapid fire. "Who are you? Where are your parents? Why are you on the streets?" Each word carried suspicion, but behind it lay something else, a curiosity he couldn't mask. Aaliyah answered carefully, voice trembling but firm, explaining that her mother had passed away 2 years ago, her father was never in the picture, and the foster system had chewed her up before spitting her out with no roof, no help, no future except what she could carve out for herself. She loved school, she said, but once she had no address, she had no enrollment, and though she kept her textbooks and studied under streetlights, the world had already labeled her as invisible. Samantha clung tighter, insisting, "She's not invisible to me, Daddy. She's my teacher now." For the first time in years, Daniel Reed had no ready reply, no businesslike dismissal. Instead, he asked her to show him how she was teaching his daughter. Reluctantly, Aaliyah sat back down, wrote out a fraction problem on the cardboard, and explained step by step in such simple language that even Daniel, with all his Ivy League degrees, found himself impressed. There was no arrogance, no hesitation, only clarity and kindness. His daughter understood immediately, solving it on her own with a cheer, and in that moment Daniel felt something shift inside him. He had spent billions building schools in his name, charity projects for tax breaks and headlines, yet here was one homeless teenager achieving what entire systems had failed to do, reaching his daughter's heart. He dismissed his assistants, sat down beside them on the bench, and for the first time in decades simply listened. News of the unusual trio spread quickly. Someone had snapped a photo of the billionaire sitting on a bench beside a homeless black girl and his daughter, all three bent over a cardboard sheet with math scribbles, and by the next morning it had gone viral. Headlines ranged from, "Billionaire meets street genius," to, "The homeless teacher who stunned Wall Street." Daniel had never cared for public opinion beyond stock prices, but this time he couldn't stop reading every article, every comment, because deep down he wasn't just impressed, he was ashamed. Aaliyah had taught his daughter in a way none of the expensive private tutors could, not because she had more knowledge but because she had more patience, more heart. He invited her into his office the next day, not as a test but as a gesture, and she walked into the skyscraper nervously, her old sneakers squeaking on marble floors, eyes wide at the towering glass windows. He offered her food first, which she devoured cautiously, thanking him as though she wasn't sure she was allowed to. Then he asked her what she wanted most in life. She didn't ask for money, clothes, or a house, she asked for the chance to study again, to go back to school, to maybe one day become a teacher officially. That honesty struck him harder than any business deal ever had. He told her he would sponsor her education fully, but more than that, he wanted her to become Samantha's full-time tutor. At first, she refused, afraid it was charity she hadn't earned, but when Samantha begged, "Please, I need you," Aaliyah finally agreed, though her eyes watered as though she had just been given back the future she thought was stolen forever. Over the weeks that followed, she not only taught Samantha math but also life lessons about resilience, empathy, and gratitude. The billionaire, often working late, began joining their study sessions quietly, listening in awe as his daughter flourished not just academically but emotionally. The house staff whispered about how the mansion finally sounded alive with laughter again. But soon, skeptics arose. Board members questioned why Daniel was investing time in a charity case. Tabloids speculated about his motives, and whispers of scandal loomed. Yet Daniel stood firm for the first time, declaring that his company's new project would be funding educational programs for homeless and foster youth, inspired by a teacher who had started on the streets. The world began to notice not the billionaire, but the brilliance of the girl who had refused to let her circumstances define her worth. The true test came months later, when Samantha's school held its annual academic showcase, where parents, teachers, and media attended to watch the students' present projects. Daniel sat in the front row, his pride swelling as Samantha took the stage, but it wasn't just her flawless math demonstration that left the audience stunned, it was when she called Aaliyah onto the stage and said, "This is my teacher. She taught me more than math. She taught me how to believe in myself." The auditorium erupted in applause, parents whispering about the girl's story, journalists rushing to capture every word, and in that moment Aaliyah stood frozen, overwhelmed by the recognition she had never thought she'd receive. Daniel walked up too, placed a hand on her shoulder, and announced publicly that he was establishing the Aaliyah Foundation, an initiative to find and support hidden talents among homeless and foster youth, giving them education, shelter, and a chance to lead. The audience cheered, but Aaliyah cried, because she knew this wasn't charity anymore, it was legacy. The billionaire who had once feared shame now stood proudly beside the homeless girl who had become his daughter's greatest teacher, and in the eyes of the world they weren't divided by wealth, race, or circumstance anymore, they were united by kindness, respect, and the undeniable truth that brilliance exists everywhere if only someone chooses to see it. Months turned into years, and Aaliyah not only graduated with honors but also went on to teach officially, her story inspiring thousands worldwide. Samantha grew into a confident young woman, always crediting her mentor for her strength, and Daniel Reed, once a man defined by power, became a man remembered for humility. What began on a park bench between a billionaire's daughter and a homeless teenager had rewritten the meaning of wealth forever, proving that sometimes the richest lessons come from those who seem to have nothing at all. Sometimes the world hides its brightest stars in the darkest corners. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes kindness still has the power to change lives. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Kindness Vibes for more true stories that remind us, every act of kindness can change a destiny.